Simon?
Yeah, Alberto!
Hi. Thank you. It was an incredibly dense, but somehow you made a complex overview simple, and I hope that the participants enjoyed the explanation behind how the parts of project program portfolios are intertwined. I want to thank you for your time, and I think that we can now go into a Q&A section with the participants. For all of those that are asking about the upcoming courses, I've shared the link in the chat window.
Yeah, and we'll do something with the video, and we'll do something with the PowerPoints.
Yeah. So to clarify,
yes, there are
to clarify, there are 3 virtual courses coming up with Simon, which will be focusing on governance for project program portfolios and PMOs. That's one of the topic. It's going to be 6 hours in duration, so 2 days in the afternoon. The second one is leading complex projects and then recovering troubled projects. The audience is going to be much more interactive for the mode of delivery for those 2-day programs, because we won't have more than, actually we won't accept more than 16 participants max. So there will be breakout rooms, people will be working on certain exercises in groups. You will be able to have group as well as individual discussions with Simon. So it's going to be much more interactive than the webinar today. Obviously, we cannot have that level of interaction with 85 participants. So everybody will receive a recording of the webinar along with the presentation tomorrow, as soon as we have the edits done. And I'll also send the info about these upcoming courses, so anybody who is interested can join us. Having said that, there were a couple of questions asked during the presentation. Ayas El Farah wanted to know, where does the PMO fit?
Yeah, and I just sent a reply to you personally, Alberto, that I meant to send to everybody. Yeah, absolutely, it was dense content. This was standing on the moon, looking back at the Earth and describing all the things that were there. And the sessions that are coming up are to get in the helicopter and fly into the middle of the jungle and put boots on the ground and explore and understand and take time over things. So the question about where does the PMO fit has maybe 4 or 5 different answers. If the PMO is a project office whose role is to support the project manager, then the PMO fits right next to the project manager and keeps the project manager's secrets and helps the project manager know what the status is. If the PMO stands for Program Management Office, then maybe it does the same job for the program manager that it did for the project manager, but now it keeps the program manager's secrets, and it's the police person, the policeman or the policewoman for the project managers perhaps. And if the PMO sits at the departmental level, then maybe that same answer, but with the names of the roles moved. But then the PMO might be sat at executive level, or the PMO might actually be called a centre of excellence. If it sits at the executive level, then it should be concerned with the portfolio and Kanban. And if it's called a centre of excellence, then that's actually slightly different answer, which depends on how the organisation is established. But often centre of excellence means we help people in their learning, and we run training courses and provide standards and templates, and our degree of authority is not defined. Whereas in the other 4 answers, that is to say, are we exec level, departmental, program or project, our authority and our loyalty is defined for us. There were a couple of questions in there about comments about this being for high-level people who are well experienced. It is at this speed. It's to give you a view of the fact that there is a rational explanation to all this stuff. The bits do fit together. It's hard to find that explanation, But if we go more slowly, then then all the bits are easy to absorb. If what we do is we spend half an hour talking about something and then half an hour working on how to turn that into things like governance management plans, project dashboards, and apply agile or waterfall processes to it, then it's much, much easier. To do all that lot in 40 hours, maybe it's taken me 40 years and I still don't feel I'm equal to it all. Difference between a business outcome and a benefit and value. So an outcome is what's happened in the business, and some of those outcomes will be seen by some people to be good and make them smile. And when they see the outcome as good and they smile, it's a benefit. And when they see the outcome as something that's not good and they're not smiling, they don't see it as a benefit, but other people might. And then when we look at how much did the benefit cost us, if the benefit cost us less than we think the benefit is worth to us, then we got value. Yeah, you're right. We'd do that. We'd do it more fully if we had more time.
I think Abrar has a question as well.
I'm just reading down the list. Majid also has his hand up. I can't see everybody.
Yes, hi, how are you?
I'm super. How are you? Are you going ahead? I'm going to carry on.
He has muted himself, so we cannot hear the question, but he can type it.
Okay.
Yeah, thank you very much for your sessions. And, you know, it's been informative. Thank you very much. I have any questions. What does mean the abbreviation of BUA? That's, you know, I did not get that. If you can explain what the abbreviations mean of BUA. So that will be much appreciated.
Okay. I'll have to go and look for where I've got an unexpanded abbreviation, but business as usual. So that's operations, normal activity.
Business as usual, yeah.
Yeah. There was a question in here. Where will set the PMO specialist? I guess it depends what their specialism is. If their specialism is in investment appraisal, then they're probably going to be in the portfolio level or the program level for projects. Where is the quality fit during the cascade? That's a good question. I don't think, well, I think we need to take that one out to answer it well, but I'll give you a bit of an answer in a second. Is Agile the only way for banking and finance? No, it's not the only way, but it is the place where perhaps we have the most focus on everything being done with IT. So it's the place where we hear about it the most. But there's absolutely no problem using Agile in heavy engineering. So but I wouldn't call it Agile. I'd call it complex adaptive systems and actor network theory now. But I've used it with people who there used to be a company, if it's not still there, called Sabah Dubai, who build things like harbors and conference centers. And I did do work with them about how you use Agile in large-scale civil engineering. I've also done sessions with how do we use Agile in building oil refineries and things like that. And the short answer is you use it for the design stage, you don't use it for the construction stage. Some of these questions that I was going to answer have scrolled off the top of my list of text, and I'm not going to try and...
I'm still keeping up. So there is Abrar who is asking who is responsible for the deliverables. Is it projects, programs, portfolio, or PMO?
Well, the very simple answer is to say the project is responsible for delivering to the baseline, and you have to pick the right delivery life cycle, and that's something that the PMO should express an opinion on, perhaps as a bit of an auditor. The program is accountable for the projects, So the program ought to have oversight of the projects in delivering, and we perhaps need a more detailed conversation about the nature of sponsorship than we have time for now, but there's a duty at the top of the organisation to provide the resources and the environment. That's a duty at the top of the organisation to provide the environment and the resources in order to allow the folk at the bottom in the projects to be capable of delivering. So there are accountabilities at every level, even though those accountabilities are not equal, they are all contributory to success. That's prayers for somebody. Are all PMOs trying?
Simon, I will have to say that you're muted again. I took the host access to be able to mute everybody in the conversation because there is a call for prayers and a couple of participants had their mics unmuted. So you would have to unmute yourself in order for us to hear you.
Done that.
Sorry
now.
About that.
That's perfectly fine. It was quite nostalgic for me to hear the call for prayers. I haven't been in the Middle East for about 5 months. I was just answering the question that's just scrolled off the top of the screen here that said, should we frown on waterfall and should all PMOs be moving towards agile? And I would say that we shouldn't frown on waterfall more than we frown on agile. Both waterfall and agile are tremendously useful in the right context, and they are both seriously damaging in the wrong context. And I don't think there are any projects anywhere that don't benefit from using both approaches within the same project when we have understanding of how to apply them. So we should not be frowning on either, we should be using both. And that should be both from the project community and the PMO community, having an understanding of what the strengths and weaknesses are. Can we make 2 levels for our projects, tactical and strategic? I think so. And I think I'd divide it slightly differently as well, which isn't disagreeing with you, but there's a difference when you're in the design stages to when you're in the delivery stages. If we're in agile software development, we can mix design and delivery with a great deal more ease than if, for example, we make airliners or we build hospitals. But that doesn't mean that we can't still be aware of how to do the tactical and how to do the strategic and how to do the design first and how to do the iterative. But that's a deeper conversation than we covered in the hour. It's the sort of stuff that we can get into when we've got a lot more time. Can you recommend good reference for Kanban? Yeah, probably almost anything by David J. Anderson. Just go find him and almost anything he's written would be a good starting point, or he's bound to have lots of stuff on YouTube or he has got lots of stuff on YouTube and the like. Not sure what in my point of view. All of them, yes, agreed. How is disciplined agile different from agile? Well, one difference is PMI paid a lot of money to buy it all and are going to promote it very heavily. So if you wanted something on your resume or CV for the next 10 years, an organization with $500 million of cash in its back pocket, that is to say the PMI, pushing something would be a good idea. To be slightly less flippant, disciplined agile says let's learn from everybody's experience and apply agile, which is perhaps a little different from SAFE, which says let's reinvent large-scale enterprise-driven structures with lots of agile words in it. And maybe I'm being unkind to SAFE there. It's interesting to note that SAFE 4.6 to SAFE 5 and ITIL 3 to 4 and a number of other frameworks, COBIT, for example, 5 to 2019, have all said we're about enterprise level benefits and driving the organization as an integrated and holistic structure. So almost every framework that's out there that's getting press and is saying that it's about the portfolio and is about understanding how to do value as opposed to being about projects and how to do agile as a software development approach. So disciplined agile, if you don't already know what it's about, I would suggest that you go and do some finding out. One of the ways to find out is that Alberto and I have got some content which isn't scheduled, which in the next 3 sessions that we're doing, but which is about what do agile project methods look like for projects and the PMO. And Alberto and I can look at scheduling that, although one of our questions there was whether it was worth scheduling anything while Ramadan is active. Goody, yes, you can claim a PDU for this. Go to the continuing professional registration site on PMI, or download the handbook and look on page 11. It will give you the bullet point that says you can claim an hour. What are the risks associated to PMO in business? Have you got another 6 hours? Khalid, that's a really good topic to debate, but it is a long conversation. First of all, we need to know how to do risk management. And then we need to know how, as a PMO, to oversee risk management. And we need, as a PMO, to do our own risk management, but actually to make sure that all the portfolio programs and projects are doing their risk management. I guess the major risk associated with PMOs is that they get staffed with people who are not properly trained. They get started by somebody who doesn't properly sponsor them, and they consume a lot of organizational resource without producing very much other than bureaucracy, and then the organization closes them down. That's on the threat side. On the risk as opportunity side, they get led by somebody who knows what they're doing and is dynamic and capable, and they drive the capability of the organization to deliver its programs and its projects up at a very high rate of improvement. Project owner is responsible for the I'm just trying to read some of these, and I got distracted by the writing on the screen, which I was also trying to read, and I got as far as risk something. Did I mean agile is most suited for design and waterfall for delivery? There are definitely industries where that is a mode of working that has a lot of sense. So while we're doing design, we're not doing stuff physical. So agile or iterative, adaptive iterative delivery is more practical. If you're in an industry which has a bricks and mortar or a cut and weld steel, then you do need your design to be something that you can rely on before you start cutting steel or laying bricks. So trying to use agile in physical construction definitely has challenges. So as a very crude statement, in every industry you can use agile while you're in design, and then in some industries you would be best off reverting to plan first before you do construction. And the major issue with construction is getting the integration order correct, so you can assemble your components and do the appropriate quality control in order that you end up with an integrated system that operates. So the reason for design first, the reason for what's typically called waterfall in many industries, is the inability of you to amend things once you've started, and the need to have a practical assembly order that supports the ability to do unit and subsystem testing. Lots of questions about when to use Agile. So Alberto, we ought to get the Agile event and think about when we can schedule it, and then we can spend a few hours talking it through, instead of just trying to answer it here off the cuff, and do something that's a bit structured.
Yeah, that's definitely on the books.
Mataz, I'll put that in the chat.
Eileen had an interesting question whether strategy alignment is equal to portfolio management.
Yeah, that is an interesting question. There's definitely an overlap there, I'd have said. Eileen, if you've got an opinion, feel free to share it and unmute yourself and speak. I think there's an overlap. I don't think they're 100% identical in both directions, but I would, just making a unsupportable statement, I'd say maybe they're 80% identical in both directions, and the 20% are where all our challenges are. So those folk who asked for the Kanban name, I put it in the chat. Is there a recommended PMO tool? You know what? I don't think there is. I just struggle, really, in that space. I'm sort of, at the moment, inclined... No, I'm not sure I want to say this. I'm sort of, at the moment, inclined to look at what Microsoft are pushing out, because I think that Microsoft Project as a file format is a de facto data interchange. So it doesn't matter whether you've got P6 or P3 or all sorts of different tools. They normally talk to each other through the Microsoft Project format. And I think that what Microsoft are pushing out with their, and I can't remember the name of it correctly, but their enterprise data model, their meta model for enterprise data, so that you can do ETL and ELT for dashboarding and those sorts of things, is looking pretty interesting. And they have so much weight and momentum that I think that analysis and artificial intelligence and machine learning tools and the like are going to continue to revolve to some degree. But if anybody in the AI and ML space generates significant momentum on their own, then that's where I'd start to look. And anytime somebody mentions Jira to me, I get a bit frightened that my development team is just going to spend its whole time playing with Jira and not actually making any progress.
So Simon, just quickly on that strategy and the portfolio management item that I added. In my past experiences, what I found is if you've got a center of excellence, the most successful rollout of strategy I've actually witnessed through having several portfolios run consecutively and actually managing the business delivery. And obviously, well, this was part of a major transformation program. And in that sense, it's the benefits we're speaking about is really realizing the strategic objectives. And I'm just asking, is that always the case? Are portfolios sometimes not aligned to strategy? Because in my past experience, it mostly has.
Well, I think you can say that there is no one size fits all. And I think you can also say that quite often the approach that's going to work is the one that fits the personality of the CEO and the rest of the exec. So I think we do have to be conscious that it's emotion and personality that drives how the senior leadership community operate and interact, and that then manifests itself in culture of the organization, and that makes what's achievable achievable, and makes what's impossible impossible. So that's a component of it. I think I'd need to understand what you meant by sequential portfolios better to be able to comment further on that. It's very common to put a portfolio at the departmental level for each department, and then have whoever owns that portfolio sit at the top table in terms of understanding what the mission, vision, values, strategy, objectives, etc. of the organisation are, and then take their own responsibilities away and implement those in a way that they have a great deal of freedom around, so long as they support that central strategy. And there's definitely some conversation. In fact, the reference that was on the slide before, the one that's still on the shared desktop, that was at the bottom of the screen. Oh, actually, no, I took the reference off because it was on my website, my personal website. But that governance and benefits delivery stuff there is really central to the idea about how do you align portfolio and strategy. I think strategy needs to say, how do we make decisions given what our objectives are? And portfolio needs to say, what are the list of things that we could be doing? And out of the list of things that we could be doing, which ones are we active on? So portfolio is the bit where aspiration or backlog becomes action. Yeah, so portfolio is the bit, to put it into Scrum terms, portfolio is the bit where product backlog becomes sprint backlog, if you understand those two terms. It's the time when we go from, I've got a long list of aspirational stuff in priority order, through to I've got a task list that's going to deliver some components of this. And that was partly why I suggested Kanban at the organizational level. At the organizational level for Kanban, there's a guy whose name I couldn't put into text because I couldn't spell it, but it's Jarno Vahanity, I think, but you'll find him if you search for Agile Fant, and that I can put in the text. Don't know if you want to come back on any of that, Eileen. One thing I'll say while you're unmuting yourself, if you're going to, is somebody said, what's the difference between Agile and Lean? Agile is a disciplined approach for a small team of people to adopt a highly iterative development of products using two feedback loops. One that's a feedback loop on the product with the customer, and the other's a feedback loop on the process with the team. And Lean is completely different. Lean is the removal of waste, normally from existing processes, in order to reduce the mean time or mean cost of a process. So they are utterly, utterly different. But lots of people in the Agile world have picked up on the Lean toolkit, the sorts of things that you do in Lean activities, and combined the two words because they sound even sexier when you combine the two together and you talk about doing Lean and Agile. But they're quite different. So Lean is about reducing the mean, and Agile is about going around a loop lots of times. Shakir, nice to have had you along. Goodbye, and please feel free to join some of the other sessions in the week. Portfolio management objectives are strategic alignment and optimization and balancing. Prasad, I agree with you. Absolutely. You can't unmute yourself. Maybe I can unmute you as well. Let me instead. Let me. Oh, No, I don't have the power, but Alberto does if he's still there. Alberto, can you unmute Eileen?
Yes, I'm on it.
Super, thank you. Hassan, good to have met you, sir. I'm glad you found it a pleasure.
Okay, there we go.
Yeah, welcome back.
Thank you, Simon. I like the way you actually explain it. The way that I might see it in the way that it's been practiced where we have been is exactly what you're saying. The Exco team, CEO, the strategic level owns the strategy, the vision. From there must be objectives to be delivered. Now, those objectives normally would also be delivered by business leaders, but those business leaders would have a split of projects and they'd have a split of business as usual activities.
Yeah.
Now, a good model I found is for the portfolio level to lie on top of the business and the project deliveries, because that's the space where you need to prioritize. So if you fall under the business owner, you actually kind of get the leftover, the runs, the people that may not have enough time, because he's going to prioritize his BAU items. So that's what I wanted to ask, So is that the ideal space for the portfolio office? And maybe that's also why it's great to have a PMO director instead of just a PMO leader under, say, for instance, IT or finance or operations, if you know what I like to say.
Yeah. So I think we've probably had similar experiences or seen similar things when you make the statement there about PMO being under an IT director. That's entirely the wrong place to put a PMO that is concerned with organizational strategy and delivery at the vision and portfolio level. I've got some sympathy with putting the PMO lead under the CFO or the FD, and it appears that I just noticed in chat that I put the answer to the question about who was the Kanban guy privately to Ahmad, and I meant to do it publicly, so I'm just going to correct that because I put it into chat and then I just found that I didn't actually do it publicly. So there it is publicly. And I also recognise I think I heard you say that you get the people who are left over and are not wanted. And that is unfortunately a consequence in some organisations. And that opens the door to a different conversation, which is when you want to deliver the organization's imperatives at the top level, then the challenge that we have is we are necessarily in a complex environment. We are in a complex adaptive system. And when we're in a complex adaptive system, in order to have sense making, we need to understand how motivation works. And motivation works at one level through the what's in it for me equation. And the what's in it for me equation in most organizations is about bonusing, and bonusing in most organizations at the top table are about operational targets. So the reason that we get the leftover folk is because the person who's going to get a bonus by assigning somebody to doing something operational has considered their bank balance and put the person into the role that is going to enhance their bank balance in the short term, not the long term. So if we have the answer that I gave you right at the beginning, or so 6 slides in, about what's portfolio, program, and project, and we see that portfolio is about balancing resource usage, and we understand that balance is not just operational, but it's also strategic or change driven, and so it's not just short term, it's also long term. And then if we add to that the definition of program, which was about bringing benefit flows into existence, and that we recognize that therefore program has a sociology, a organizational, an organizational dimension that is about how people interact with each other and their behaviors, where those behaviors are focused on maximizing the organization's benefit, whatever that is, short, long term, run and change, then we start to get balance. And when we get that balance at the top table, because they are having the right conversation, because they have the right bonusing structures, and they can cascade those bonusing structures down the organization. And if I actually change the slide that's still on the desktop here, on the presumption that you've, this picture here actually says, so I hope you can see the shared desktop picture. If we slightly change the label, the text here, the grey box at the top left-hand corner, which says PMO leaders and course directors need to have a conversation about what's the organisation want to achieve. Why is that? Because we have marketplace pressure. How is that? Because we set the right bonusing structure. Who is it? All the people below us. When is it? Immediately. Then we can go to the blue box and we can say, instead of what PMO managers and program director, we can say, what are we doing? Delivering the strategy. Why? Because the incentives are attractive. How? By designing the future. Who? By using the people below us. When? Immediately. And then we can step down and up to the pink box in the bottom left-hand corner. And instead of what their, how do I operate as a PMO analyst? How do I understand burn charts and earned value and progress reports? We say, what am I doing? I'm building the things I have the technical skills for. Why? Because I get a salary and incentives, and because I'm being given problems that are exciting for me to solve. How? By being given sufficient freedom, which is now opening the door to the agile world, where agile is a philosophy. So the statements about be agile, don't do agile. Agile isn't a process model, it's a mindset. Well, the mindset is enacted at the bottom there by the people between their mid-20s and maybe just slightly their 40s, who are still engaged in the challenging technical activities of, I don't know, subsurface analysis in oil fields, or investment appraisal in investment banks, etc., because that's the stuff that's sexy to them. And then the right-hand side of this picture would be the how do we do the escalate and the monitoring. So the left-hand side is actually the answer to your question, but I changed the words in the box for this presentation.
Absolutely. So when you put this picture in the perspective that you've just explained to me, it makes 100% sense.
What it also says is the program bit is the bit in most organisations that's maybe a bit broken. Organisations don't know how to do programs because they've been reading the books from the PMI and other people, and the PMI didn't know what to say when they wrote the book, so they wrote crap, and then everybody's implementing crap. And that's a shame.
Yeah, the reality of running or rolling out a major program is a bit different to that theory. No, but thank you for your time. It was really, really insightful. Hoping to see you again soon.
You're very welcome. Well, we're planning to do a whole bunch of stuff, so we'd be very welcome. We'd very much like to see you along. You'd be very welcome. And if you want to share with colleagues and the like that you enjoyed this session, we'd be very grateful for that.
I will do.
You'll get the slide deck, and that's got contact details in it.
Excellent. Thank you, guys. I'm going to have to go.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Ciao.
Ciao.
We're down to our last 40-odd people. If you've got questions, continue to pop them into the chat. But I think that we're...
Yes, there was one question from Alt Knesal. I'm not sure what's the name here. And her question was, can a PMO supervise a crisis cells at company level?
A crisis?
Cells. I'm not sure I understand the question completely, but...
There was also one about, could a PMO help with COVID that I saw. Amar, thanks for those kind thoughts, and you too stay healthy and safe in these troubled times. There's some interesting stuff being talked about at the moment about the potential for PMOs in the COVID environment, and I think actually my response would be to say that the lessons that we take from complex projects about how do you harness the ability of people to solve complex problems is something we're seeing emergently happening with medical responses to COVID in the research and development, and also in the clinical frontline sharing of experience of what's working and what's not working. And that suggests to me, I may be interpreting what I'm seeing with what I already believe, so I may be confirming my own biases by interpreting what I'm seeing, but I'm seeing people increasingly talk about what is the communications chapter in the complex projects event that we're going to do on the 7th and 8th, where there's a session which will be on the 8th about what does the communication structures need to look like in complex environments. And I think I see in LinkedIn and Twitter posts that are crossing my timeline that it's emerging that people are behaving in the medical professions in those ways. So I think that's less about being a PMO than being a coordinating facilitator. And that's a slightly different interpretation of the PMO role than I think we commonly see referred to in most of the literature and standard stuff that's around. So who knows, in 6 or 12 months' time, we might be seeing some research papers about how PMOs can be adapted to work in a different way from in the past, because they are now becoming enterprise-level complex coordinators as opposed to enterprise-level PMOs.
Okay, Citrus iPhone, that's an interesting name, has a question: is it important to have the PM reporting directly to the PMO head?
Don't know is the answer. Depends on the culture of the organization. It's important to have PMs working in an environment where the organization understands that the project delivers an output and you only get value when you have outcome. An outcome occurs in business as usual, and business as usual is a component of the portfolio. So it is important that the project managers have a report into an appropriately enabled sponsorship person or community. Whether that's the PMO or not depends on how you set your PMO up. I think generally speaking, well, if we take the PMO definition that the PMI gives us for the directive PMO, then that's okay, because the directive PMO owns the projects and should sit at the top table. So the comment that Eileen made about having your portfolio or your senior level folk at the I can't remember the phrase she used, but she used quite a nice phrase that said it quite well. But if you've got the PMs being supported at that level, then you're in a good place. And if that's the PMO, then great. But it doesn't need to be the PMO. It just needs to be the right degree of oomph. There's there's something called the golden rule, which is the people with the gold make the rules. And that's what we need as the project manager. We need to work for somebody who makes the rules. Thanks, Majid, for your kind thoughts.
Participants who is still online with us. His name is Mohammed Abdul Rahim, and he is asking a question. Is the upcoming courses explain the integration between KPIs and the portfolio program and project management?
Well, we do have one, which not one of these three, but we do have one in the lot that I delivered in, where was I last? Was I in Dubai or Bahrain, or where did you send me last?
The last course, yeah, the last time we had you in Dubai.
It was that awful hotel. It was an awful Crown Plaza. Where was it?
No, that was in Qatar.
That was in Qatar. Okay. Well, we do have the course that I ran in Qatar. We need to schedule it.
In June.
That will take us through the. That will take. Well, we should perhaps next week ask folk who are here or have been here whether or not it would be they would feel that something after sunset was appropriate during Ramadan. They might all be far too busy after sunset dealing with other things, but we could ask. Otherwise, yeah, we can do it after Ramadan. But that does go through the what do we need, and I have to draw lots of triangles in that to cover that conversation, because it's about the data working its way up the organisation. Okay. And then we have to understand whether or not we're talking about leading or trailing metrics, and what the K means in KPI. And if you look at a metric, is it a K for you or a K for somebody else? So yeah, we can definitely cover all of that, but it's not in these three that are scheduled in the background behind you and I. Okay, I think that we're closing in on the end because we've had a Q&A that's probably longer than 30 minutes. Yeah, I think one question from Assam just posted saying project manager profile is clear, but somehow it's confusing to segregate between the role or profile of a PMO manager and program manager. So what's the difference? Sorry, what was that again? So a project manager's role or profile is clear, but somehow it's confusing to segregate between the role of or profile of a PMO manager and a program manager. Basically asking what is the difference between a program manager and a PMO manager. Okay. And there's another good question in the chat too, which is, what's your advice for someone asked to establish a PMO function from scratch for an IT department at customer side parallel with IT service management? So not the same answer for both questions, but I said earlier there are perhaps 5 different answers to the question, what does a PMO look like? And the PMO could be supporting a project, supporting a program, supporting a department, supporting an enterprise, or a centre of excellence. So to answer the question about PMO manager and program manager, we first need to know what sort of PMO we were looking at. If I'm PMO manager for a program, then my role is to support the program manager, and I am just a specialist within that leadership team that leads the program, where my specialism is effectively being a local equivalent to the finance director type thing. I do the numbers and facilitate the processes and help all the project managers understand their role and be their conscience and those sorts of things. If I'm the PMO manager for a department with a program in it, then I am that program manager's conscience, and I am the policeman who keeps that program manager honest and supports that program manager whenever they ask for help. If I'm the PMO manager for a project in a program, then I probably don't have much involvement with the program manager because I'm going to be involved with my project manager. But I might get asked by the program manager, in which case I probably have to have a less than terribly comfortable conversation that says, I've got a project manager that I'm loyal to, and I'm sure you have good conversation with the project manager. So don't ask me to talk to you directly about stuff that I would talk to my project manager about, because they're my direct customer, and you're my indirect customer, and there is a chain of probity that's the thing I need to honour. And if I'm the program lead for an enterprise level PMO and there's a program, then again I think I'm probably the point of conscience and support, but I'm overseeing the program. So that would be my answer from that perspective. If that's not covered the relevant point, then was it Mohammed? Then feel free, Mohammed, to ask for clarification. And in respect to the other Mohammed question, Mohammed Isam, what's your advice for establishing a PMO for an IT department alongside IT service management? First of all, Mohammed, again, Alberto and I have got some stuff that's not scheduled in these three that are listed here, but we've got some stuff on setting a PMO up, so we could, and it will be a lot less intense, not less content, but less content in the time period, less intense than the stuff we've been through today, but it will be as much content. So that's a big question to answer. What do you need to do to establish the PMO function? The PMO function within the IT department needs a bit of clarity, but presumably what we're looking at there is the delivery of new capability. The service management component should be looking at the ability to deliver services from the capabilities that are in place. If you went to COBIT, for example, COBIT-19, and you look at the 5 domains within COBIT, then you'd find one of them with 4 component parts, which is the sort of governance bit, and you might loosely say that's the PMO bit. And then you'd find 4 other domains with, I can't remember the number, but 10, 20, 25, 30, about 35 objectives. And and out of those 35 objectives, about 25 of them are probably the service management bit. And the reason that I changed my mind mid-conversation there between 35 and 25 is that 12 or 13 of them are actually about service acquisition and therefore probably fit in the PMO bit. But the COBIT model, go and find the COBIT 2019 documents, look at the 5 domains, and you'll find a bunch of stuff in there that you might say, that's more PMO than service management. And you'd find a whole bunch of stuff in there that you'd say, that's definitely service management. You might also look to ITIL version 3 for that answer, but I think all you'd get there would be the service management bit. You wouldn't get quite so much insight into the PMO bit. And I guess if you're going to go and look at COBIT, you really probably need to understand how to read it and what the model is that's in there. And there's definitely some of the COBIT stuff in the governance course that we'll run next Sunday and Monday. The governance course, I mean, I've used COBIT since version 2. I don't know how long ago that was. It's 15 years ago or something. So anytime I talk about enterprise governance, I am influenced by COBIT because I didn't exactly grow up with it. I'd been working for 20 years when it arrived. But there's good stuff there. I think it's a good model. So if you wanted to join us on the governance sessions in the next next week, I'll take you through governance, and I'll definitely be explaining the COBIT model in there, and that'll help you. And I'm just reading what you've typed in. Yeah, so service portfolio and service catalog. Yeah, it's still hard, isn't it? Yes. Yeah, I'm not ITIL certified, but if I reach onto my bookshelf here, I can't see where my. That's funny. Well, somewhere on my bookshelf here, I have the books that predate ITIL, and I can't see where they are, which is making me. Yeah, I don't know where they've gone, but I have the books that are pre-ITIL on my bookshelf, and I agree, it's still hard. Can you join? So Mohammed's just said in text, can I join? 3 days, so it's foundation. Join the governance thing that we're doing is 2 sessions of about 3 hours with a break for prayers, obviously, because it's in the evening. So we've got a break in there because it falls across prayers, and it's going to explore what governance looks like for organisations, why it's there, why if you do it right, it adds value, and what you need to do it right. So yeah, it's reasonably introductory. It's not presuming any prior existing knowledge, and it will take us through the what do you need to do to create a governance management plan and to roll out governance. Although that governance is not particularly IT, it would certainly be relevant to IT, but it's more what do we need for governance in the projects, programs, and portfolios and PMO space. So its fingers extend into all the domains, but it's not specifically focused just on IT governance. Although it wouldn't be too difficult for you to listen to what we talk about with an IT ear, to say I'm not interested in anything that's not IT. I have now run out of tea. That may be a point at which we say that yes, it would be good to be done, because I can't lubricate my conversation any further because my bucket of tea has gone. If Sivaraman is still here, I think if you're still here, you can claim 2 PDUs for this, because we've been going for almost 2 hours. But officially, it would have been 1.
Yeah, I mean, there are still 35 participants, but we have to take this meeting to a cap.
Yeah, I think so.
It's been, I think, a very long Q&A session, which was very interesting. Thank you so much, Simon, for extending the Q&A time frame. Everybody will receive their copy of the materials from today's presentations. As I said before, we'll be in touch with individual participants for their certificate of attendance, and of course the video once it's rendered and ready to be shared with everyone. Simon, a huge thanks for joining us for this session. It was very informative.
Well, it was a pleasure, and all those questions were great to get to, because they make the brain cells turn. So that was it was good to be in a position to field all the questions. So I didn't mind in the least.
Perfect.
Okay,
I want to wish everyone a good evening, and we'll be in communication further, and we'll be in touch over the upcoming week for our next courses and next sessions, so we can keep engaging.
Okay.
Remember, stay home, stay safe from the pandemic. Our health is the most important, and we'll be in touch, guys.
Yeah. Cheers, guys.
Thank you, Simon. Cheers.
Thank you. It was a wonderful session. Have a nice evening. Bye-bye.
Thank you for your kind words. Goodbye, and thanks.
Bye.
Goodbye.